Welcome to our web exclusive. I'm Mike Montecalvo, along with Eyewitness News analyst Lieutenant General Reginald Centracchio. We are taping this on Wednesday, obviously, General, and we're remembering Pearl Harbor. It's the 75th anniversary. Memorials are taking place from Washington, D.C. to Hawaii. Even locally, there were some events that took place. Even though, you know, anniversaries are big when you hit like a 70, 75, so we're at 75. But do we really talk about this enough and what happened on that day?
We don't. In fact, we don't talk about it much at all. Even in our school systems, we don't. So when we get to the particular anniversary, we attempt to take the entire year and put it into that one day. But in Rhode Island, I think there's a certain relationship because it was a tremendous impact on this state, especially having Quonset, Newport, Fort Adams. And the impact that he had was just before Pearl Harbor. We were taking a neutral approach, with the exception of the Lend-Lease program, to Europe. But at the same time, we were not really looking forward to becoming engaged in any kind of conflict. With that changed everything on that particular day, and Quonset, Newport, Fort Adams, and all of the consequences that we saw after that, getting into the war, was tremendous, Rhode Island.
All right, before we talk about that actual day and the attack and what happened after that, let's talk a little bit about Quonset and Fort Adams and Newport, because I don't think people realize, that you go back 75 years, they look at Quonset today, you know, they don't know what was going on and what was happening back then.
Yeah, it was basically a training facility, both at Newport as well as Quonset, and so Fort Adams was still in its to some extent operational. But at the same time, what happened basically the day after was significant, because you saw a blossoming of Quonset as well as Newport, and certainly Fort Adams. We had what was called defenses of Narragansett Bay. Submarine shields were put up the entire Bay area, and much of that is not even realized today, and consequently it had a tremendous impact not only on the psyche of the people of the state, but the physical aspects of what we saw within the next several years after Pearl Harbor.
You know, we heard soldiers so many times over the years talk about hearing the low-flying planes, and I think they used the word the muffled bombs, and then all of a sudden something take place. Obviously, it was a surprise. I think the surprise was because there was negotiations going on at this time.
Yeah, all of the politicians in Washington were still speaking, and as that was being planned, Japan knew that that was going to happen. We maybe had an idea, but we didn't know there was going to be an attack on that particular day. And when that happened, you know, obviously the next day, President Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war, and that's still a day of infamy, as we all recall, were his words in his message to the Congress.
If Japan knew what would happen, I don't think they would have done it, but what led them to do that, though?
I think at that time they were basically left out of the Treaty of Versailles, and that let them envision themselves as being isolated in that sector of the world. And so they looked at it as the only survival that they had was to be able to expand for more resources, and they took on the United States without realizing what the impact was going to be. If they felt as though if they crippled the Pacific Fleet, there'd be no ability for us to take any action against them. But they were wrong, because we were able to mobilize quite rapidly, and obviously the end of the war came several years later.
You've talked to hundreds of soldiers over the years, so many different wars. You've talked to soldiers there. One stand out in your mind? Yeah,
one. Al Sparling was aboard one of the aircraft carriers during the Pacific War, and he told me so vividly that one of the kamikazes was coming at his ship, and he was looking at the pilot, and he could see him clearly, and the pilot was smiling and waving, but he didn't hit the ship. He went right into the ocean. And so I'll never forget that story, and he was obviously concerned that he was going to be a casualty, but it didn't happen, and that always stuck in my mind as being really extraordinary.
Yeah, that's going to be an unbelievable feeling seeing that. There's a special event going on Sunday, twofold actually. It's a Christmas special, a Christmas concert. The American Band is going to be at Scituate High School, but I think the timing's pretty good, General, because of the 75th anniversary today.
I think it's appropriate to say that while we recognize what happened at Pearl Harbor, all of the wars since then, we need to continually appreciate and thank all of our veterans for every one of the single wars, and this is an opportunity to do that, especially for those out of Scituate area, and the firefighters and police that certainly suffered an impact on 9/11.
All right, the concert's free. It starts at 2 o'clock at Scituate High School. We'll be there. We hope to see you too. General, as always, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here. Have a great weekend.